Hi, it's Alaska Granny. It would be great to be able to grow your own vegetables, raise your own animals, can your own food, harvest everything, and prepare it and put it away in your gigantic prepper pantry, maybe even your cellar or basement in your home. But most of us don't have that capability. We don't live on a homestead. We don't have the ability to raise animals. We may not even have time to go and buy big packages of food, bring them home, and can them for the future. For those of us who don't have the ability to grow our own food and maybe don't have the time or even the desire to do all that canning, you can go to the grocery store and stock up on some cans of chunky soup. Chunky soups are a great way to have meal starters. They can be a meal on their own if you need something for one person in a hurry, and there are many ways that you can stretch them into a bigger, better meal that can feed more than one. Something that I noticed during the pandemic was all of those wonderful varieties of soups that used to be available were no longer there. Prices went up and the variety was curtailed. Everything suddenly became just broth with noodles, rice, vegetables, maybe a little bit of chicken, hardly any beef, but the variety was just gone and the prices were still going up. So while you were getting less expensive ingredients in your soup, you weren't getting all of the varieties that you wanted for a bigger price. So that was really concerning to me. I started shopping again and the varieties are coming back. And yes, they're far more expensive. If you can find them on sale, that's a great time to stock up. But even so, as you notice in your own store, perhaps the soup aisle has contracted and it's smaller, and then I don't even know what they've put in its place because they don't have the variety they used to. And perhaps if the space seems the same, if you look, there are 900 cans of one variety rather than fewer cans of many varieties. So even if you can only add to your food storage stockpile prepper pantry one can at a time, look at the chunky soups and see if there's something that you enjoy. I try to find soups that actually also contain meat so that I have more protein, more flavor, and meat is becoming far more expensive and harder to purchase for many of us. So I try to find it in the soup. So you might find minestrone soup, but also you can find minestrone with sausage. And so that gives you more meat, more protein, and the flavor that perhaps you want. How can you make your minestrone with sausage a bigger, more filling meal? Try adding a can of kidney beans. Cook some pasta and pour it over it, and you'll have a nice casserole type dish. I like to buy the beef with vegetables. You can find sirloin burger with vegetables, beef with vegetables. You can make these bigger, better meals with a few simple additions. Add a can of vegetables, add a can of potatoes. Make a package of Idaho and mashed potatoes and pour the soup over it. You can try the same things with beef, barley, and vegetables. How can you make your hearty beef barley a bigger, better meal? If you have barley, go ahead and cook that, but barley does take quite a while to cook. You could just make up a pot of rice and serve your soup over a bowl of rice. Pub-style chicken pot pie has turned out to be one of my favorites, and it was something I hadn't tried before the pandemic. Maybe it wasn't even available, but it was the best sounding one when I was looking for soup during the pandemic, and now it's something that I like. So don't be afraid to take one home and try it, and if you like it, go back and get more. But don't stockpile a bunch of foods that you don't really enjoy, because you want to spend your money and your storage space on foods that you do want to eat. I've served the chicken pot pie soup over mashed potatoes. I've also made some drop biscuits, and that was a nice tasty addition. Chicken sausage gumbo. I stocked up on quite a few of these because my sweetheart loved it, but he unfortunately passed away in December, so now I have to make sure that I either use these up or donate them. You could always add a can of beans. Black beans or red beans are good with gumbo. You could add some spicy corn. It continues to add to the flavor of the gumbo, which is a little bit spicy. Okay. If your soup has a tomato base, but it's either too spicy or not spicy enough, you could jazz it up with a can of Rotel or calm it down with a can of tomatoes. Then you've made it bigger, better, and you could serve it over, say, pasta or rice. Creamy chicken with wild rice is very good. You can always serve this over a pot of more rice. Italian style wedding is a soup that I used to buy before the pandemic, and then I didn't really see it anymore, but I still have one can stashed away that I'm going to have to rotate because it's out of date by now. But this is a great soup, but it has a lot of broth, not very much meat. You could add to your Italian style wedding soup even a package of gnocchi, and these are little potato dumplings. Drop them into boiling water. It takes them a minute or two to float, and they're ready to serve. So you could then add them into your soup or serve them in a bowl and pour some of the soup over as a topping. Loaded potato soup. If you love a loaded baked potato, this might be just the thing for you. It has all the flavors of a little bit of cheese, a little bit of bacon, creamy sauce, and it's pretty tasty. But if you wanted to make that a bigger meal, you could also serve that over gnocchi. You could serve it with mashed potatoes, add a can of potatoes, and even some mixed vegetables if you want to have more variety in the soup. So there's a lot of ways that you can jazz up a soup and make a bigger, better meal. Maybe you have some chicken and rice or chicken noodle soup, and you want those to be a bigger meal. Perhaps in your pantry you have some egg noodles. Egg noodles have eggs in them, so they're not going to last long term like regular pastas and macaronis and noodles were, but you can have them if you rotate them within a year or two. If you're storing macaroni, noodles, pastas, make sure that you store them in an airtight container and they can last nearly forever. Another option that makes it easy to pour into one of your soups, little teeny tiny pastas. I found acini di pepe. You can simply pour a little of this into one of your brothy soups, and it's going to add more pasta to it. It's going to just take a minute or two to prepare. If you're in a power outage, maybe you have a little portable stove, you can heat up some Italian wedding soup, add a little bit of the tiny pasta into it, and then it's going to be a nice bigger meal. But just like the other pastas, store this in an airtight container. I ran out of jars, so I sealed this up with my Food Saver vacuum, but I didn't want to vacuum it because I didn't want to crush everything. It's still airtight, so it can last in the pantry as is for a while. But the better you store your food, the longer it's going to last. So remember, airtight, cool, dark, and dry. As preppers, we want to remember that our pantry is a prepper pantry. We are using food, rotating, replacing it. We're looking for new ways to use the foods, and then we want to have variety in our meals. Nobody wants to eat the same thing day in, day out. If it's an emergency, yeah, we'll do it. But if we have, say, a couple of weeks, a couple of months, and even long term where your family doesn't have enough money to go and buy more variety of foods in the store, or the foods just become so expensive or unavailable. If you remember to the pandemic, there were many food items we could not get, and we didn't have to worry if we had variety in our prepper pantry. We could make meals, maybe they weren't the best, but that's okay, we still had something to eat. And if you have a few of those not so good meals, then you really appreciate when you do have one that tastes delicious. Continue to add to your food storage stockpile and your prepper pantry so that you're going to have the meals that you need in the future. Be on the lookout for foods that you haven't seen in a while, or maybe you haven't tried and you want to check out something new and different. I like to include chunky soups in my food storage stockpile, and these are some of the ways that I use them. If you have ideas on how you use some of the chunky soups, leave it in the comments below so we can learn from each other. The more ways we know how to use the foods we have, the more enjoyable our meals can be in the future. If you enjoyed my video, I hope you'll share it with someone else you think might like it. Please subscribe to the Alaska Granny channel.